Okay, here's your tutorial for immigration and urbanization. If you missed any notes, this is a great way to fill in what is missed. And I'll go very quickly as there's a lot of slides on this one. All right. Oh, let's see here. Immigration patterns changed after the 1880s. Immigrants used to come from Northern and Western Europe. These are areas that are very similar to English. There's great things like countries like Great Britain, Germany, uh, Ireland, the Scandinavian countries, and they're very similar to those who are here to be who have they're the same ethnicities or ethnic groups and religious groups as to those who have already lived in the United States since colonialism. So immigration wasn't anything new. It just was there's just a different group of people or more accepted, except maybe for the Irish, but before the late 1800s. As you got to the late 1800s, you got the new immigrants who consisted of people from Southern and Eastern Europe. These people were very different from what the Americans would call natives. Natives are those Americans who are descendants of the old immigrants. But Southern and Eastern European countries are countries like Italy, Spain, the Slavic regions like of Yugoslavia. Well, not then Yugoslavia. It's Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Eastern European countries, Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. They look different. They practice different. Many were Catholic or they were Jewish, and they expressed a different culture. I mean to do that, kids. I got that. Okay, express a different culture. All right, next one. Old immigrant countries. We're talking about, as I say, Great Britain, Ireland, Germany, Scandinavia, France is an example. Another example of it. Scandinavian countries are Norway, Sweden, Finland. The new immigrants were coming from countries such as Italy, Poland, Greece, Russia, and Hungary. And these are folks that are they're predominantly Roman Catholic or Jewish. They spoke a different language, some of which, many of it was either Romantic or Cyrillic, which is a Russian language. China, I believe but they're more of an old immigrant than they are a new immigrant. But they also were not very accepted, very different. You got push-pull factors, the reasons to come and reasons to come out. Push is a reason to leave your country. So it's a reason that kicks you out of your old country, and then the pull factors are reasons to come into the United States. So pushes you out, pulls you in. Pull factors example is the hope for better opportunities, which is indeed a pull factor. There are plenty of opportunities for you to become, get a good job, to do well, to open your own business and succeed. There's other people escape from oppressive governments. So the government was persecuting them because of their religion or their political position. And that was a reason to leave, a push factor, as it's stated here. I know I'm moving fast, but you can always pause this video to get the information you need. Desire for religious freedom. The United States is a country that does not establish a religion, nor does it prevent you from exercising your religion freely. And so even if it does, even though the population might not accept you because of your religious background in the United States, but the United States government has to. It's in the Constitution. It's your right to religion, your freedom of religion. All right. So religious freedom, and the other one is adventure. I mean, that's kind of a pull factor too, because America's this big country, a new country, different languages. It's very adventurous to do this big old new change. And this picture you see here is a good example of New York City and that's how big it was. And that's kind of an adventure to go to live there and to live through it. How did they get here? Immigrants' experience. Many were very poor, and they could not afford to travel comfortably on these trips. Many often traveled in what's called steerage, which is the bottom basement to the crowded lower deck of the ship. Lots of diseases, very dark, poorly ventilated, bad hygiene. And people would be, could die from these ships. There's some people like to call them coffin ships because a lot of people go on these ships and many of them would find themselves in coffins. And as time went on and as nautical technology changed, moving from sails to steam engines, um, the experience was a little safer and a little more comfortable. But many did travel what's called steerage. As I said, poorly ventilated disease traveled quickly through passengers, and the diseases that were very contagious. And the problem is that these disease, because of the contagiousness of the diseases, and that they're from another country, and we may in the United States do not have a natural immunity towards them. This is when they decided to move to process immigrants in islands rather than the mainland. And that's why you see in New York, you see Ellis Island. We talked about that. We had the whole little Ellis Island experience. And in San Francisco, you have Angel Island, which is the processing plant for the Asian immigrants, the European immigrants from Ellis Island and Asian immigrants from Angel Island. Healthy immigrants are naturalized. Unhealthy immigrants would probably stay until well or forced to go back. They also check to see if you were a political threat or a threat to the community before you went in. So a series of questions and so forth. We're talking about city development. By the way, this is Detroit. Became a very, very powerful city during this time, especially when the automobile was invented. Well, not invented, but mass-produced in large quantities. The affordable automobile was invented. Specialized industries, you had all these things called specialized industries, which is a city would specialize in one particular job or product. For example, Chicago meatpacking industry was a specialized industry of Chicago. That's where chances are if you're going to work at a factory in Chicago, you're working at a meatpacking plant. You had immigration from another country. You had lots of immigrants that showed up willing to work, and they will contribute to the population growth of city. And we have people coming from rural to urban. These people like with mechanization of the farm, these folks lost their jobs and they had to find work somewhere, so they went up north to the cities and worked in those jobs. Immigration was a problem, mainly because of the conditions that they were living in. Many immigrants came off the boat not knowing what to do or who to talk to. And you had methods of help them out. One method was to use the settlement home, which is like a temporary housing to help immigrants adjust to American life. And this was established, the first of these settlement homes was established by Jane Addams. And this was in Chicago, and she developed the Hall House. She had owned some property in Chicago, and she converted it to a kind of a halfway home for immigrants to help them prepare and get themselves ready and educated so they can find a proper job. There's another person another way that you could help immigrants was through the political machine. These were basically their politicians who, in shady deals and so forth, would will start building projects and then hire immigrants to build those products, and that would they basically convince immigrants to vote for them, and of course, if they don't vote for them, they could lose their job and so forth. So basically, they provided immigrants housing and jobs in exchange for votes, and that's a good example of that is this Boss Tweed fella that we'll talk about. Now, the cities were not in good conditions. You can tell by that picture with those kids playing in the gutter next to a dead horse. And their efforts to try to solve this problem. Well, so one issue against that issue with immigrants was the constant threat of discrimination. Chinese were discriminated because of their language or culture. There's the Chinese Exclusion Act that made it illegal for Chinese immigrants to enter the United States. It's the only federal law that focuses on one race of people or one group of people. And yet Irish are discriminated for many years for their religion and culture. So there is a long history of discrimination against immigrants populations. Cities were not looking good either. There's so many immigrants in there, living in there, that all the towns became very overpopulated. You had overcrowded tenements. People had five, maybe 2 or 3 families living in a one-bedroom apartment. You had overcrowded tenements and ghettos, those ethnic communities that they lived in. Political corruption. The political machines weren't, even though they helped immigrants, they're highly corrupt and stole a lot of taxpayers' money. Even though you have a job that watched the video on Boss Tweed explaining how he would built a courthouse and it cost more than the Parliament building in London, because of he just would sell things or price things at a higher level than they actually were worth. But in the meantime, immigrants are working in the construction of these projects. So, you still have corruption, and it's still, corruption is corruption. It's going to hurt you sooner or later. And that, I believe, is the end. I hope this helps you out. If you have any questions, feel free to call or ask me. And take care.